I want to say hello to everybody that's watching, all the viewers that are watching this video around the world. I want to say hello to you, greetings to you. I appreciate you for tuning in and taking the time to watch this video. I have an issue. That I want to discuss, that I want to bring up. I don't make a lot of videos, but when I have something that is pressing on me or in my spirit or whatever you want to call it, I tend to speak out about it and I make a video or make a post about it. I don't do that all the time, but this is an issue that I want to talk about, something that has been on me for quite some time. According to the National Center for Victims of Crimes, a reported 1 in 5 females have been sexually molested. Also, 1 in 20 males have been sexually molested or abused. 1 in 5 females and 1 in every 20 boys have been sexually abused. Also, according to the National Center for Victims of Crimes, every 98 seconds there is a sexual assault in this country. Every 98 seconds. Every 98 seconds there is a sexual assault in this country. According to statistics, 3 out of 4 victims of sexual assault were abused by relatives or close friends. 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4 victims. They didn't give an age. 3 out of 4 victims that were abused by a relative or a close friend. They say that the highest at-risk persons start around the age of 12. The highest at-risk person. The most vulnerable people to this crime start around the age of 12, according to them. Records indicate that every 11 minutes, get that, every 11 minutes, Child Protective Services substantiates or finds a new claim for child sexual abuse. Every 11 minutes, there is a new claim for child sexual abuse. I have an issue with that. And my issue is not that this information, is there. It's not that the information has been reported. My issue is the exact opposite. My issue is that this information doesn't make sense to me. This information doesn't add up to me. Number one, how is it that every 11 minutes, Child Protective Services finds a new claim for a new child or a new claim for another child? Every 11 minutes, a new claim happens for sexual abuse, but then you say 1 in 5 girls have been molested, or 1 in every 20 males have been molested. Those numbers just don't add up to me. Those numbers don't add up. 1 in 5 girls? That means out of every 5 girls, only 1 has been sexually abused? 1 in 20 males? I don't have enough hands for that. But just take these 2 and then get another 2 on this side. And every 20 men, every 20 boys, every 20 males, only 1 of all the 20 has been sexually assaulted? I beg to differ. My problem with this information is that it's inadequate. It's inadequate. They only report what they know. They only report what we tell them is actually happening. How can you say that the highest at-risk persons start at the age of 12? A 12-year-old is cognizant of their surroundings. They know who they're dealing with. It's a relative, it's a friend, it's a teacher, it's a creepy guy in a van. 12 years old, you're telling me that a cognizant, intelligent, or not so intelligent 12-year-old is the highest at-risk person for sexual abuse. I think that number is more like 5 or 6. The highest, in my opinion, the highest at-risk person for sexual abuse is around the age of 5 or 6. For you to say that 1 in 5 girls have been sexually molested, I think that number is probably more around 4 out of 5 girls. 4 out of 5 girls is more accurate. It's more like it. To say that 1 in 20 males have been sexually abused or assaulted is very inaccurate. I think it's probably more around every 2, 1 out of every 2. 1 of every 2 males, that's probably more of an accurate number. The problem is we are being molested, we're being sexually assaulted, we're being raped, we're being violated, and we're not talking about what's happening. That is my issue. We're not saying anything. We're going through these things and we're having these moments where we feel helpless. We feel like our voices are not being heard. We feel like our will doesn't matter. Our will and our right to choice, our free will at that moment is taken away from us by someone that has no right to take it from us. And we're silent. And we're not saying anything. That is my issue. Let me be clear and say that this is not an easy topic of discussion. This is not something that we walk around and talk about every day. In fact, it's not even something that we're just going to tell anybody at any given time. It's one of those things that we tend to protect and keep silent. It's one of those things that by default, it's a silent issue. We're not just staying silent for no reason. We're not talking about this issue for no reason. We tend to hold this inside, nurture this thing, keep it to ourselves with reason. We tend to do it for what we justify within ourselves and call it a reason. I had a friend call me some years ago after some years of not talking. We graduated high school and we hadn't spoken in some years, but after talking again, it was like, there was no time at all. We quickly caught up and talked about life and its changes that had presented itself in our lives. We talked about her being married and having a child, and she told me that life had changed for her. It was great, and it was something that she was sharing with me that I was excited for her about. And so I said, it sounds like you're doing great. It sounds like life is great for you. And she said, well, no, not so much. And I said, what do you mean? Well, why not? Sounds like life is promising. Sounds like you have a future. You have a husband. You have children. Sounds like life is great. That's the dream. You live in the dream. And she said, well, I want to tell you something. I want to share something with you. She said, I really haven't shared this with anybody. This is probably one of the first times I've ever really talked about it. She began to share with me something that disturbed me. She told me, she said, my husband, he beat me up real bad, and she said he just got angry. He began to hit me, and she said he tried to rape me in the house. And I said, are you gonna kill me in front of my son? And he took her out in the field. He continued to beat her, raped her in the field, beat her to a bloody mess, and left her there to die. And she was pregnant, and she lost that baby because of how traumatic the experience was. And as a result of that experience for her, she became silent. She became quiet. Her character changed drastically, and she was terrified of men. She didn't want anything to do with men in any capacity, but specifically a romantic capacity. She didn't want any type of relationship romantically with any man. If a man made sudden movements around her, it terrified her. If a man spoke loudly or aggressively around her, it terrified her. There were a lot of things that really was traumatic about that experience that would haunt her for years after the experience had ended. As a result of that experience and her fear of men, she turned to women for the love and affection aspect of her life. She wasn't a lesbian by choice. It was an alternative because of the fear that had taken place from this experience. She called me and she said, I hear that you're a pastor now, and I don't know how to deal with this situation. You're my friend. We went to school together. I knew you before all these things happened. How do I deal with this experience? I was angry. And I said, what experience? What are you trying to deal with? What are you trying to cope with? She said, every time I go to church, the church tells me that I'm going to hell because I'm a lesbian. The church tells me that I have no right to be there because I'm a lesbian. And I said to her, has anyone ever asked you why you're with a woman? She said, no. They just tell me I'm going to hell. And I said, no one's ever sat you down and asked you what has happened to you or why your choice was what your choice was. And she said, no. We just condemned her. And I said, well, let's do this. Let's speak out about it. Let's talk about it. Let's do a tour. Let's talk to kids at school. Let's do a speech. Let's do something. Let's do something, I said. And her response to me was, I can't do that. I can't talk about this. And I said, why? Why not? She said, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed, she said. I said, you're embarrassed? Why are you embarrassed? Do you feel like this is your fault? Do you feel like you've done something wrong? Why are you embarrassed? And she said, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about this. I just want to keep silent. Needless to say, the man got away. It wasn't reported. She stayed silent. I know another man. He married a woman. The woman had 3 children. She had 2 girls and a boy. The 2 girls were older than the boy. The boy was the baby, but the 2 girls were molested by the man, the woman's husband. When the first girl said something, the mother didn't believe her. No one did. It took the second girl coming forth after she came of age a little bit and became a little more bold in her approach. And she said, this has happened to me. It happened to me at this time. It's been years. I didn't say anything because I knew you wouldn't believe me. I saw that you didn't believe my older sister, so I didn't say anything because you weren't going to leave him anyway. I'm not talking about conviction and convicting people and sending people to jail. I'm not talking, I'm not a cop. It's not my thing. Whatever. What I'm saying is the silence has affected our lives so drastically that it's become second nature to be silent about things that haunt us or brings fear at this dynamic to our lives. It's time to talk about it. It's time to say something. I was molested at the age of 5. At the age of 5 by a relative. I didn't know what to do. I had no idea what I was doing or what was going on. I was 5. I was 5 and 6. And I said something as soon as I could. I didn't know. But what would have happened had I remained silent? What would my life look like right now had I remained silent? And it was only up to a few years ago that I actually learned how to deal with all of these issues, dealing with this person and talking to this person or seeing this person or more or less confronting this person. I mean, it was a difficult situation that I had to work through and pray through and get counsel about. But there was no one to help me speak through the situation. So here we are now. We're in a place where we've been silent for quite some time. We've been silent for a long time. And now it is time to say something. I'm currently working on a book. The book is called Silent Voices. I want to tell your story. I want to tell your story on your behalf. I want every person that has ever been a victim of sexual abuse, any kind of sexual encounter, any kind of sexual abuse or violation, sexual crime. I want to tell your story. I know that being embarrassed is a common dynamic of the mentality of the sexual victim. So I understand the feeling of not being able to speak. I can't do that. I can't say that. I feel embarrassed. I don't want to speak out. I understand that. I want to tell your story anonymously on your behalf. So what I want to do is I want to solicit you. I want to ask you to allow me to tell your story. There's an email. I want you to send your story. Write it exactly how you want it read. I won't edit your story or make any changes to your story. I may do some grammar effects to your story, make sure it's well written, make sure we making sense. But for the most part, I won't change the context of what you're saying. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, I want to tell your story. I want to be your voice in your silence. However you want to write it and relay it to the world, I believe this is going to be a dynamic way to break the silence. It is time we start saying something. The email address is MySilentVoice at mail, not Gmail, at mail.com. MySilentVoice at mail.com. Silent voices, breaking the silence. I want to tell your story in a dynamic way. It is time that we break the silence about this issue. It is time that we speak up and say something and stop suffering in silence.